Yaakovs. He's a professor of psychology in Yeshiva University. And he's been a therapist, I think, for around 35 years. I think he lives in New Jersey. And he says, Rabbi Jacobson, I want to share with you a personal experience that I had. And he shared with me the following experience. It's a whole long story. I'm going to tell you Bekitzer Devart. He says, many years ago, a boy came to see him in his office, around 15-year-old boy, La'erech 15 or 16. What was the issue? The issue was he couldn't make it in any yeshiva. Every yeshiva, a few weeks, a few days, he was thrown out. In at the age of 15, he was probably in 9 yeshivas. Came from a very prominent Torah-focused family in Flatbush. Father wanted him to go to therapy. Yaakovs tells me, sometimes a patient comes in and you see there's absolutely nothing wrong. He says, I love this kid. He's a great kid, smart, interesting, sharp, charismatic, talented. I'm thinking to myself, he doesn't need therapy. He's pretty good off. People just don't know how to deal with him. So I tell him, he tells me that I tell him next week, bring in your family. Bring in your father, your mother, your brothers, your sisters, and if you have grandparents, bring in your grandparents. So to me, it was surprising that to Yaakovs, I never heard a therapist brings in a Zayd and a Bubba to therapy. You can ask the Holocaust survivor, what are your feelings about your mother? Yeah, who even had a mother? If you had a mother, you were happy. Right? It's not a generation that was busy analyzing, dissecting emotions. If you stayed alive, it was already a mess. So he says, you're right, but I had a hunch that the grandparents should be there. So he followed his hunch, interestingly. So the next week they came in. So he asked the father to speak why he wanted his son in therapy. So the father says, listen, we have a family of such B'nai Torah. And he goes down the list. This one is a Rosh Hashiva, this one is Maggid Shir, this one Rosh Koil, this one finishes Daf Yomi 7 times. This one gives a Shir in Daf Yomi 6 times a day, before Alois, after Alois, before Shachas, after V'sik, 9 o'clock. This one is this one made Hatzalah, this one is Rosh Haskanim, this one runs this one is the biggest Baal Chesed in the continent. And then his daughters are Mamish, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, graduates of the best seminaries and their husbands. So they have one boy, and Mamish, it's a busha. Wastes his time, good head, wastes his time, doesn't learn a thing. And I feel bad for him, I love him, and I feel bad for us. It's very embarrassing. So the Zayda, the father of the boy, gets up and he says he wants to say something. And he tells everybody a story. He says that he grew up in Poland. And he had a huge family and everybody was in yeshiva. And he was the only kid who was, today they would diagnose him with all the diagnoses. He was out of yeshiva. So he was very street smart. He was savvy. He was shrewd. He was sharp. And he says one day, he was out there in 1938, and he picked up a book, Mein Kampf, by Adolf Hitler, Yamach Shemoy. He comes home and he tells his father, Tata, Poland is on the border of Germany. Hitler's going to do what he says he's going to do. There won't be anybody left. Let's take the family and run before it's too late. Father looks at me and says, Head of Red Narishkeit. Stop speaking nonsense. You speak like this because you're not learning. If you would sit and learn like your brothers, you wouldn't read this stupid material and you wouldn't speak like this. He says, Father, listen, I should be learning, I should be in yeshiva, that's true. But you know that I'm sharper than my brothers, and you know that I'm smart, and you know that I'm savvy, and you know that I have feelings for things, and I'm right. And I'm telling you, there won't be left a Jew in Poland. We should run. My father rebuked me and chastised me. He says, this is, you potters that sight, you're wasting your time. And I told my father, I'm going to have to run alone. I'm not staying. And I left my family and I crossed the Atlantic Ocean, 1938. He says, I was the only survivor. My entire family was murdered. I was the only survivor. Then he says, I look at all my grandchildren and I ask myself, is there anyone who's like me? And that boy I always saw was my replica. So all of you should have respect for this boy, because none of you would be able to sit and learn today. You wouldn't be alive if not for me, and if not for a boy like him, who was different, but because of him you're all alive today. No one of you should ever disrespect this person or put him down, because it's only because of a spirit like his that all of you are alive today. He sat down. Bhagavad says there was stunned silence in the room. You can imagine. They didn't know the story. He says, I wanted to share this with you. So I look at him, I say, listen, you can't tell me a story and not finish it. It doesn't work. In my work, Das ist doch mamish midas achzaris. She says, what do you want to know? That's the story. I says, Heint. Who halt is Heint? He says, a Heint. He says, I'll tell you. The grandfather had a huge successful business. He was very wealthy. In fact, he said in the meeting, he told his son that if you continue this path, I'm going to erase you from my will. If you continue this path, I'm going to erase you from my will. Classic Holocaust survivor who's fearless, who made a lot of money. He said he took his grandson into his business. So I said, what's now? He says, today that boy runs the whole business and all of his brothers work for him. That requires perspective. It requires vision. Doesn't mean there's no challenge to deal with. But it means you understand souls, you understand energies, and you don't create boxes. And when somebody doesn't fit into your box, you go crazy, mad. It doesn't work that way. And the result is from one extreme to another extreme. Because of this attitude, ultimately, the Jewish people were saved, both in this story and in Eliphaz's story.